What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Convicted Podcast. My name is Ryan, and we have been gone for some time due to all the stuff that's been going on over the past couple of years, but we are back now with some awesome interviews, and I really think this has got some good information that if all bands start applying these things, that we're going to start seeing the music industry become better and better and better. But right now, we got a clip from the person that we're interviewing, so let's check it out. Welcome back to the Convicted Podcast. Today I have Justin Hatton with me, one of the promoters at the Noise Box. He's also a good friend of mine. For those of you who don't know, we have been in a band called Forthteller for a long time. Justin was the rhythm guitarist. I was the lead guitarist. And we've both worked at the Noise Box for quite some time, but he's been able to do stuff for tour management and for promoting and all that stuff. But I don't need to say all that stuff. We need Justin to say all that. So Justin, can you give us a brief introduction on who are you, what's your background, kind of what's your story, and fill everyone in?
Yeah, so I'm Justin. Like you said, I'm in Forthteller. I am the venue manager of the Noise Box and also the promoter. I've done tour managing for Forthteller. I've done booking for our band and other bands as far as like booking tours or booking shows. I've been doing the Noise Box for about 8 years now, about 8 years now. So I don't know. My life has been centered around local music and touring music alike. So I've just been doing it for a long time. I love it. And I just like to see other bands flourish.
Absolutely. And for today's episode, we're going to be talking about we're still on the Battle of the Band stuff because Justin is going to be one of the judges. And for him, with his part of the rubric, we kind of built up something called professionality when it comes to how bands operate at shows, during shows, before shows, stuff like that. So we're going to go over that today. And this is stuff that's going to be applicable whatever show you're at, not just at a Battle of the Bands, but these are things that you can apply and become better and better and better as you go. So why don't we go ahead and go over this starting at the beginning. The first bullet that we have here is interactions with the promoter. What would you expect from bands as a promoter? And what do you think all promoters are kind of expecting from bands?
Well, I think the main thing that they're expecting is just the main thing I'm expecting, at least, and a lot of other promoters from my experience, is just professionality. And that's kind of like a daunting word because you're like, oh, I don't want to be just like have a stick up my butt and I want to show my personality. But there is a way to do that as far as like just being professional, but also being able to let your personality shine. And the part that I want to talk about with professionality is really just like for a small example is knowing like the right questions to ask a promoter at like the right times. So anything as far as like information, like when I need to be there, what time is our set, and stuff like that. Those are questions that you ask like before the day of the show. So if you're coming to the show, and it's normally something that the promoter will give you beforehand, but if the promoter hasn't, and it's like a couple days before, you can shoot them like an email or a text or message on Facebook, however the correspondence is gone, and just be like, hey, like what time do you want us to check in? We're super stoked on the show. And then do you know when our set time is, or like how long our set time is and stuff like that, just so that you have the information that you need, but also it's not adding more work to the promoter, because the promoter, if they're a good promoter, first of all, should have all that information way ahead of time. So those are questions that you ask beforehand. And then when you get to the venue, those aren't questions that you ask the promoter. So you don't ask like day of what time I'm supposed to be there, because the promoter is not worrying about what time the bands are supposed to be there. He's worrying about making sure the bands are there on time. So you're already like adding an extra like stressor onto him, because now he's thinking this band won't show up on time. Now I got to move things around to make sure I'm available for them at different times than what he's establishing. So like on days of, it's like, where do we load in? Where do I put my merch? And then in questions that you shouldn't ask, because there are questions that you just shouldn't ask because they're, one, unnecessary, and two, they're just taking away from the promoter's time that he needs for other things, because he's also worrying about doors, he's worrying about staffing, he's worrying about making sure that, like, just the general flow of the show is running smoothly. So questions you shouldn't ask is like, can we have a longer set time? Like, that is number one. It's like the promoter's already giving you the set time. You should take what you get, especially if you're already there day of. Like, no, you're not getting a longer set time if you're there day of. If you wanted a longer set time, be like, yo, like, our set's 22 minutes instead of 20 minutes. Is it cool if we go 2 minutes over? Like, that's not a bad question to ask, but it's definitely bad to ask day of. Or like, can we move our set time? And do you have a table for our merch? Like, those three questions they seem like small, but if you ask the question, can I have a longer set time? Now the promoter has to be like, oh, can I make this time frame work? If they're wanting to do it, now you're adding the stress of, oh, can I make this work with the time? Because some promoters have to work within like venue time frames because they rent the venue for a certain amount of hours. So they're like, oh, can I fit this in? Or can we move our set time? Now he's like, okay, well, let me see if this other band is cool with playing at this time so that your band can play at this time, because you just didn't ask that beforehand. Right. And then, do you have a table for merch? That is like one of those big questions, because it's now you're taking the promoter out of the promoting role and you're having him almost be your little like puppet in a sense, because it's like, oh, now I got to go find a merch table for this band. Like, those are just questions that seem small, but at the end of the day, make you look entitled as a band. And you don't want that view on your band. You want to be like, oh, especially if you're local. If you're local, you need to be like, oh, how can I make the life easier for the promoter because he's dealing with these other touring bands? Or if you're a touring band, those are questions that need to be established way beforehand, way before day of. Because when it's day of, it's too late. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And also, I wanted to add in there. So imagine if all the bands showing up asked all those questions.
Exactly.
That would be outrageous and way too complicated, especially at the 10 band plus fests. That would be outrageous. Dude. So it's kind of like if you, out of consideration, not only for the promoter, but also for everyone at the show, the bands, the fans, everything, like, is what you're doing, if everyone else replicates it, is that going to complicate the whole thing? If it's a yes, then you probably should try to stay away from it. Yeah.
And like with touring bands, they have more of a say in that, because the show is really about them in a sense. It's like, ultimately it's about the fan experience, but in a sense it is about the touring bands, because they're traveling sometimes across the country, sometimes across the world to play in these cities and these venues. The promoter is trying to make their lives as easy as possible. So if you're a touring band and you want to ask those questions, those need to be established way beforehand so that the promoter can have those already in mind and have notes about that. But if you're the local on the show, your job as the local is to make the experience for the fans and the touring bands the best that it can be, because you're representing your city, not just your band, you're representing your city. And if a band comes through, especially like, I remember we played with a band from Australia one time, and we ended up becoming really good friends with them. It was over at the Orpheum over in Ybor, RIP at this point. But we played with them over there, and it was their first time in America, definitely first time in Tampa. And they ended up loving the city. And I'm not to say that's all because of the locals, but it does have a huge play, because the locals, or if they see that the locals are thriving and that the music scene is thriving in the local community, they're going to want to come back because they know people are going to come out.
Right. Yeah. And even when we've been on tour, we've been like, oh yeah, we really liked going to city state because the people there were like super supportive and everything. Exactly. And then we've had other ones where people were kind of standoffish, and that kind of left a stain for the city in a sense. Obviously we know it's not like everyone at the city, but sometimes it kind of just leaves that feeling there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in here something about ticket money for those who are selling tickets, I guess local bands.
Oh yeah. So like if it's a show with pre-sales, which isn't a bad thing, if the show has pre-sales, it's mainly on how the promoter handles it. Because if
Right.
you're selling like $20 tickets and you're only getting $2 for it, it's kind of a rip. But if like you're getting a good amount of money for the tickets that you're selling and the promoter is doing his job, it's a win-win situation because you're going to have more people there and you're going to get paid.
Right.
So like that's to preface the whole pre-sale argument, because I don't like to do pre-sales all the time, but sometimes you just have to. And it's a whole thing, and that can be a different podcast. But having your ticket money like organized and ready to go when you get there is such a huge relief for the promoter. Because if you walk up to me, you're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, we're in this band checking in, here's your pre-sale money, and here's the leftover pre-sales. You do that for me, you're already at a good start, right? You show up on time and you have that stuff for me, boom. We're already in good like sittings, you know what I mean?
Definitely. And always give the leftover tickets.
Yeah,
always.
and people don't understand that because it's like with the leftover tickets, it's not that, oh, we want those tickets. It's to show that the money that you have matches the tickets that were sold, because God forbid a band just gives out tickets and it gives me money. And like, say I wanted them to sell 30, they sold 15, and they give me 5 tickets back. That means that there's 10 tickets floating around somewhere. And in my mind, it's like, oh, that's 10 people coming in the door that aren't paying.
Right.
So it's a big no-no if you don't do that. And you might not even think about it. You might have been like, yo, I lost these tickets. But that's something that you need to talk about with the promoter, figure something out, or like just be truthfully honest with them before the day of and be like, yo, I'm missing this amount of tickets. I don't know what happened for them. What do you want us to do about it? So that the promoter knows that you're not trying to be shady, because yeah, there's shady promoters, but there's also shady bands. There's both.
Right.
And we all know that.
Definitely. So what I want to do is I want to jump one down here because we're still talking about day of stuff. And there's one that says show up on time. And I know that you have a strong passion about load in time being very specific. Can you kind of share about that?
Yeah. So obviously the standard is don't be late for load in time, or the standard mindset should be don't be late for load in time. But also don't be early for load in time. And you know how people are always like, well, if you're on time, you're late, or if you're early, you're on time. That's not how it goes for like promoting for a promoter at a show, right? So like if I say again, there's a touring band coming through, their load in time, depending on the size of the band, is normally around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then like show will be at 7. So I'll tell bands to show up at like 5 or 6, right? For the local bands. And if the local band comes at like 4 o'clock, now I'm having to deal with the things that the touring bands need, because they might need 2 sound checks. They might need special stage setup. They might need like just to get all their things together and load it in a certain way in order to make sure their show is running smoothly. And now you show up at 4, and basically I'm just going to tell you, go do something. Like, cool, I'm glad you're here, but go do something that's not in this room or where you have to ask me questions, because I'm already having to deal with the touring band because they need that attention at that time. And that's something that was discussed with the booking agent, the TM, all that stuff. And now you're showing up. It's like, I don't have time for you right now. The time that I have delegated for your time where I can mentally handle you being here is that time. So yeah, don't be late, but also don't show up early, because it's almost just as much of a burden if you show up early as if you do late. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I get it, but I'm here to kind of tell you why it's bad.
In this context specifically, just be on time, nothing else.
Seriously, dude. And it's something simple that you can do.
For sure. So let's talk about the networking opportunity that we have with interacting with other bands. What do you think bands should be considering when they're at shows in order to network better?
Just number one, just don't be a jerk. Like to keep in PG, just don't be a jerk. Like if you come in and you're like acting entitled as a band and you're not like talking to other bands, or you're making the promoter's life difficult to where he has to talk with other bands that makes their life difficult, it's not going to look good for you. And you're going to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth that's there of you being at shows. And if you're a local band especially, that's not the vibe that you want to give off. You want to give off like, yo, I'm here to have a good time. I'm here to network with these bands. I'm here to make the promoters' life easy so that we can all just have a good time. If you come in and you do that, you're going to be a promoter's best friend. You're going to get asked to come back. But if you come in acting like you're some big shot when you still practice in your garage on a regular basis, you know what I mean? It's like, no, like you don't get to act entitled, because the thing is that's going to leave us like a sour taste in the promoter's mouth, and you might not ever get asked to come back. And promoters know each other. Word travels fast.
Oh yeah.
And like
grapevine is quick.
So, and there'll be plenty of times where like another promoter, bigger or smaller than me, will ask me like, yo, like, should I ask this band, or what band should I ask to be on this show? Cause I have this touring band, and we'll all talk, because none of us really have bad blood with any of us. We all want to see the music industry thrive. You know what I mean? So word will travel fast. And if a band is like entitled or making the promoter's life easy, they're not going to be a band that's referred. Or even worse, they're going to be a band that's told like, yo, you should never work with them.
Right.
And like, I'm not saying that to scare any bands, because it's really not that hard. It's like, just don't be a jerk. It's like, just be kind. Don't take crap from people. Like if you're being treated wrongly, tell the promoter, be like, yo, this band's trying to do this. Like, I'm not trying to snitch on them, but like, just so you're aware, this is happening. Like, that's cool, but just try to be cordial. You don't have to be best friends with every band, because you might not like them. But the thing is, be professional and be respectful, because at the end of the day, if you're just like lashing out or you're being entitled, it's not going to do anything for the other bands or the promoter. It's only going to look badly on yourself.
Just to tag along with that, like, also, you never know who has bigger connections. You never know who's on the way up. You never know what band might break through in 2 to 3 years or whatever. And if they had a bad experience with you, they're not going to ask you to come along, but maybe they have an opportunity to have a support tour with them, and they just had such a great experience with you that they remember you and say, hey, let's reach out to X band and like have them join us. You never know. Same with promoters, same with venues, same with sound techs, anyone that you react with. Like, you just, everyone, try to network as much as possible. Be friendly. It doesn't mean you have to work with them, but like for your own band's integrity, just do well at being friendly with everyone that you can while you're at the shows.
Exactly.
So I'd like us to go ahead and jump into a few of these at the same time. So you have your gear ready to go before going on stage. You have staying within your set times, and you have load on and off stage with allotted time frame. Can you kind of go over those all together? Like, while you're at the show and it's about to be your performance as a band, can you kind of go over that as a chunk?
Yeah. And so I'll just start with loading on and off like the stage during your allotted times, because a lot of times a promoter will give you either a full amount of time that includes like loading off and your set time, but I kind of separate it because it can be confusing at times. So typically with like a show that's like a smaller show or whatever, or like there's a touring band and then there's a couple locals, I'll keep the local times to 20-minute sets. So that gives you about 4 or 5 songs worth of content to give to the fans that are there. And then I'll give them 15 minutes to like coordinate with the next band, like loading on and off, basically. So the way that I view it is, if you take too long setting up, that doesn't mean you get your full 20 minutes. That means you get 17 minutes or 15 minutes to play your set, because you need to have, as a band, a way to load on and off your stuff in a timely manner, because that's not just for local shows. That's for like being on tour, because I remember we did that tour with Emery and No Sleeper, and it was one of the best experiences of our lives. And one of the things that we did to make sure we made their lives easier was getting on and off that stage quickly. And our stuff was already loaded on beforehand, because we were the first act of the touring band, so our stuff was already sitting up there for us to just walk on the stage, get our stuff, and go. But getting our stuff off, we had to make sure we got our stuff off on time. And we had more stuff because we were touring, and so we had more stuff on the stage. just to make sure that like we were giving a good performance. But if you have more stuff on the stage, you need to take into account that that's more stuff you got to take off. So what you and I have always said is that if a band is starting up, whether they're going on tour or playing local shows, make sure that you have a system and that you time it of tearing stuff down. Now, it might sound tedious and be like, why am I going to waste practice time doing that? It's something that doesn't go into your overall like performance. Like the fans aren't going to see that, but that's something the promoters, the techs, and all the other bands are going to see. And if you are doing that, then you're good to go. And that's speaking from a band like ours who had 1.6 people in it, keys, bass players, 2 guitars, full drums, 2 vocalists. Like that's a lot of gear. Yep. And our gear wasn't light and it wasn't cheap. So we had a lot of stuff on that stage, and we were able to do it whether we were touring or just playing local within that 15-minute time frame. So it's not to say that a band can't do it. It's just making sure that you're doing it properly and making sure that you have your stuff like ready to go. And speaking of ready to go, I swear to God, drummers, never put your cymbals on the stands on the stage. Oh my goodness, man. Because you need to have that stuff ready to go beforehand. While that next band is playing their last song or whatever, make sure you're just putting those cymbals on, screwing them down, making sure they're good to go. So that when you go onto the stage, you're not bringing stands, bringing drums, bringing your throne. Have the cymbals ready to go. The legs are spread out. The cymbals are on it. You're placing those in the right spot. Your drums going in those little creases that they need to go to, thrown down, boom, you're ready to go. So that if you're miking the kit, it can get mic'd. If you're not, you're ready to still sound check. Then guitarists and bass players, make sure you have your pedals, your head ready, your amp ready, all out of cases, ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then, vocalists, you just have a mic, but sometimes you're in charge of making sure everything is set in place, or making sure the rack system set up for your ears or whatever. Make sure all those casings are off. Make sure they're ready to just plug and play on the stage so that you're there on sound check, go.
Yeah, and you should definitely make sure, like, while you're practicing with your setup and teardown, make sure everyone's got something to do during that time. Mm-hmm. So that does mean that if the vocalist if your band has a vocalist that all you do is plug in a mic, like maybe you should arrange to have the vocalist specifically help get the drums on stage, get the drums off stage, or whatever it is, just something to be able to like lessen that time down by everybody doing something consistently. And also, I just wanted to say, your show, your performance is not done until you are off the stage.
100%.
Now, if you're like the last performing band, by all means, sure, you can leave this stuff on the stage while you go talk with fans, whatever. But most of the time, for most bands that I think we're going to be talking with here, you're not the last band. You got to get out of the way. And this is also about the interactions with the other bands we talked about earlier, because you want to be out of the way of other bands as well. So if you've got, like, if you're a guitarist and you've got your pedal board down and the next guitarist is going to come set up after your performance, you want to get your pedal board out of the way as soon as possible so that they can get their pedal board down and set up. And that way it makes everything easier for the sound crew with setting up the mics and getting the wires down. And it makes the fan experience better too, because the faster the turnover time, the better they can have like a sound check and everything ready to go so that it can be the best fan experience. So just consider it for everyone.
The golden rule for that is never bring your cases on stage for any piece of equipment. Never. Unless it's like a living case that has to be on the stage, like a rack system or something. Even then, never bring the freaking the lids on them.
The caps.
Never bring those on stage. The caps, never bring those caps on stage. Never bring your pedal boards case on stage. Never bring your guitar cases on stage. Never. Those go either in your trailer if there's no room for them, or within the designated staging area that a promoter will normally have for bands. Those stay there, and once you're done, you take all your stuff off the stage. You don't leave the stage unless you're taking something with you off the stage. Cases never come back on the stage. They never even make it on the stage. You know what I mean? So,
and this also means This also means that if you aren't able to wrap cords quickly, don't wrap them on the stage then. Get
Nope.
them in a pile, take them off, and then when you're out of the way, then go ahead and wrap and pack it up and get ready to go on to the next show, especially if you're touring.
Yeah, because speaking as a guitarist, like I didn't run digital. I just haven't. That's an argument for a different day. But so I have a lot of analog stuff. I have a lot of analog pedals. I use a head unit. I use a cab. And I have like 2 guitars that I use on stage. Those all go on stage with me. And so I have a lot of cables and I have a lot of heavier equipment and I have 2 guitars. So, and I'm able to, if I really wanted to rush myself, wrap all those cables quickly, get everything good to go, move out. But typically I like to take my time with that so I know that I haven't lost anything, especially when you're a touring band. This is a good rule of thumb, is like make sure you just have your stuff off the stage and figure out like the system that you have in order to make sure things aren't lost. Like for me, everything goes in the same spot every time. If it doesn't go in that spot, it's lost, whether it's somewhere else or not. In my brain, it is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. I need to go to Guitar Center and buy a new thing. So that's how I am. So I know everything goes in the same spot every time so that it is just streamlined. So I would say never wrap your cables on stage. Just take all that stuff off. Never take your cymbals off the stands. Take those things off. Like just take everything off the stage, go to the staging area. That way you have time to tear it down and break it down, and that you're able just to make sure that all your stuff is there. You're out of the way of the next band coming on, and you're done. Like that was your performance.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and jump down to the follow the rules of the venue. Can you kind of better explain how like there might be different rules at different venues?
Yeah. So with different venues, and I've seen this from touring and working at other places, when it comes to the rules of a venue, every venue is different. Like some places like have a bar, some places don't. Some places like, oh, you can drink. Some places like, oh, you can't. And some places you can smoke on the inside. Some places you can't. So the thing is, it's like a lot of times the venue, in some places you can't stage dive. Like those are like, because they don't have the proper like not security, but they don't have the proper what's that word? Insurance. They don't have the proper insurance for that. So
for sure,
the main thing is as a band, because a lot of those times those rules are for like the people who are attending, but you're also attending at that venue. You are there at that venue. You are in their domain. You are in their house. You are a guest in their house. So always make sure like if you can drink there, have a good time. You know what I mean? If you can't, don't do that. Find a bar afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or find a bar while you're waiting. Whatever you need to do. And if you can't smoke inside, take it outside. You know what I mean? So just follow those rules. And if like you can't stage dive, like yeah, it sucks because everybody loves that. But just make sure you're following the rules of those venues, because the thing is like you want the fans to have a good experience. You want the venue to run smoothly, and you want your band to be asked back. So all of that boils down to making sure you follow the rules of the venue. And the promoter is supposed to know those rules. So if you're not following them, the owner of the venue is going to be like, dude, why the heck are these bands acting like imbeciles right now? Why are they children? And then the promoter has to explain why you're babysitting a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Oh, yeah. We've even seen, like on tour, we've seen bands kicked out of venues because of disobeying venue rules.
Yep.
Like it's dumb stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I remember when we first played the Orpheum, I'm going to bring it up again. We first played the Orpheum. If you ever come to Ybor, there are chickens everywhere. No one, like, I don't know why I lived in Tampa my whole life. There's just chickens everywhere in Ybor. And those dudes are protected by the city. And I remember one time we were a young band, first time at the Orpheum, and we were just like 2 of our members were just chasing these chickens around the parking lot, right? And they just run after them. And one of the bartenders came out. She's like, "Hey, stop messing with the chickens!" And we were like, "Okay, don't mess with the chickens." You know what I mean? It's like we're just following the rules, even though it's silly. And the chickens, it's just chickens. But like we found out later that you can get fined if you are the cause of one of those chickens dying. So it's like just follow the rules.
Don't chase the chickens. That
yeah,
should be, I guess.
Don't mess with the chickens.
That'd be funny if that was this podcast title, Don't Chase the Chickens with Justin Hatton.
Don't chase the chickens, dude.
Let's
Don't
go
chase
back
the
up to
chickens
the
and then watch out for shoe liquor.
Oh yes, you were for sure. That's a different story. Let's go ahead and jump back
That's
up to
another story for the
the
podcast.
special requests. It says make no later than 3 days before the show. We probably should have went over this part earlier with like pre-show with check-in, but what is a special request? What does that mean? And what should you do about that?
The easiest way to describe a special request is anything that is going to add to your performance out of the norm. So one example of that is a stage plot. And a lot of people who are in touring bands have heard this before, or they should have, but bands who aren't at that level yet might have never heard about it. So going back to us as Forthteller, like I said, 6 people, keys, whole shebang. Like we had backing tracks, we had bass drops, all that stuff. When it comes to our setup, we looked from like, if you've never seen us before and never seen how we set up stuff, even though we do really well, we look very daunting to a sound tech.
Right.
And so they come up and they're like, oh, there's 6 bands, there's a keyboard player, there's all this stuff. So all he's thinking is, do I have enough cables for all this? And is this going to be difficult? That's the only thing they're thinking. So to eliminate that pretense beforehand, I always talk to the promoter and I'm like, yo, here's our stage plot. Make sure you give this to the sound tech, so that it was like, 1, to make it easier on us, and 2, to make it easier on the sound tech so he's not bamboozled by 6 people on the stage. You know what I mean? Right. And with the stage plot, it shows where all your stuff is aligned, where the cables need to go. Is this direct in? Does this need to get mic'd? Do you have your own mics? Do you have any in your system? Do you need monitors? Like all that stuff is listed on the stage plot. If you need examples, you can Google it. There's a free software, I forget what it's called, but if you Google it, you can find it, where they allow you to kind of plug and play with different like icons, like guitars or drums or whatever, and you can visibly lay it out, and then you can list all the inputs. Like you can do an input list for the sound tech. Definitely. And then if you don't find that website, learn Photoshop. Just plug it in there, and you can easily make one on there too.
For sure. Sage plots help a ton for the sound techs to know what they need to do, and it makes your setup a lot easier too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move into the last. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one last thing for like special requests is if you know that you're going to be late as far as like check-in time or whatever, and you know like a good little bit out, it's okay to let the promoter know, like, yo, I know you said check-in's at 5, but something came up and we won't be able to be there until 5:30. That's still cool. Like stuff like that. Like as long as you're letting the promoter know before like the day of about stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, the promoter might be a little ticked off because it's like, I already told you this time, why are you going to be late? Like what could have happened? But there's stuff that does happen to where you're going to be late. Like, you had an unexpected thing with the van, so you have to get the van fixed on that day. Yep. We've been in that situation before. And
I feel like it happens a lot more on tour.
It definitely happens a lot more on tour, but also it happens locally too if you're just local. Like it happens. So those special requests, like that's in quotation marks because it could be kind of anything. Make sure that you're letting the promoter know, or the other bands know, or the TM know, or the booking agent know way beforehand, so that everything is still running smoothly. Like I said, a show is like a train, and you just got to keep that train rolling.
Or even not the way beforehand as much as you can, but if you just had a tire pop, like as soon as possible, send out that message type of thing.
For sure. Like if something happens day of that's out of your control, van issues, deaths in the family, someone's sick, like all that stuff, you do need to let the promoter know that beforehand, so he's not just sitting there like, where's this band at? Like, are they coming? Do I not need to worry about them? You still need to let him be in the know. And yeah, the promoter might be pissed off because it's the day of, but it's better for him to know than him just sitting there wondering where you are and not showing. Because I've had no show bands before, and it's the weirdest experience ever. also frustrating.
Definitely. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this last bullet that we got here, and that is promote the event. How can a band promote the event? What does that mean? What is kind of hoped for or expected of bands with promoting events?
Okay, so because I'm the mean promoter, I'm gonna preface this. The promoter needs to be promoting the show first and foremost. That is his job. So if he's not promoting the show and you're the band and he's like forcing you to promote, either don't work with him again or buckle down and just do it. That's up to you. But if the promoter is doing what they're supposed to be doing and promoting the show, these are the things that you need to be doing as a band. You can tag posts on social media, like make sure that you're tagging like the venue, make sure you're tagging the bands that are performing. And if you want to do like an ad about it, you're more than welcome to. Like if you're short on funds, like don't do the ad. But if you want to do it to make sure that people are coming to see you, then by all means, go ahead and do that. So make sure you're tagging the venue, you're tagging the bands, you're tagging music on there if you want to. Like promoting a show and promoting like your band is kind of how you want to do it. Like there's some rules to go about, make sure you're including the venue, including the flyer, stuff like that. But also like if you want to throw your song on there, throw your song on there. If you want to throw a music video on there, throw your music video on there. Like do it. And also promote the event off of the event page. Like if someone's already on the event page, they know what they're there for, right? You can make yourself known that you're going to be at the event because sometimes people don't look in the little details or whatever. Like you can make sure that you're known that you're on the event, but your promotion is not on the event page. Your promotion is supposed to be driving people to that event page. So make sure you're posting about the event page on your social platforms. Make sure you're sharing the flyer around. Make sure you're letting people know that you're going to be at this event, not just, oh, I'm at this event on the event page.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing is do not make another event page if there is already an event page made by the promoter or the venue. It seems like, oh, well, why can't I do that? Because we're just going to drag more people to it. No, what's going to happen is you're going to have people on this event page and the promoter's going to have his event page. And now there's two event pages. People are confused. And also the promoter doesn't have like all the numbers that he needs because the promoters do look at, oh, the interested list, oh, the going list, oh, the not interested, like, or the maybe list or whatever. Like promoters look at that stuff to try to gauge how much money they need to make sure that they're making on this show or how much money they need to set aside just in case they don't make it on this show. Mm-hmm. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into the numbers game when it comes to promoting that the promoters need those numbers from the event page for. And if you as a band are making an event page, you are taking away traffic from the main event page that the promoter needs. Instead of making an event page, ask the promoter or the venue or whoever's in charge of the event page to make you a co-host. Because then you're able to promote the event page as if you had the event page, and it'll show up on all your on your Facebook events. It'll show you in the description, and you'll have almost as much power as making the event without the hassle of the confusion that comes with posting about the event page.
Yeah, because it'd be terrible if like the promoter updates something and then like no one in your band is like keeping track of that and doesn't update the other Facebook page, and then it gets confusing. And why? Just stay to the one.
Yeah,
make
like
everybody, please.
In the grand scheme of things, it makes sense to have one event page, but sometimes people don't think about that and they make one. And while it seems harmless, you're doing more harm than good.
Definitely.
When it comes to that.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, that's a big overview of everything that Justin helped put in for the professionality side of the rubric that we have for the Battle of the Bands. Again, these are all things that you can apply anywhere, anytime as a band, or not apply, as you just heard him say, not about certain things.
Yeah, there are things to apply and there are things aren't to apply. And I tried to make this, like the rubric, I tailored it for the Battle of the Bands, but I tried to, like in this podcast specifically, talk about how to use those same things to apply it to every facet of your band's professionality when it comes to working with a promoter. If you do these things, you're gonna be asked to play on like all kinds of shows, and you're gonna be loved by other bands and the promoters, and you're gonna be in good standing in the music industry because the word travels way faster than you think. You're only 2 or 3 contacts away from Rise Records. Honestly, you are, whether you think
It's
it or
really
not.
true. It really is true. Like that 2 to 3 step thing, you never know. That's why I said that earlier, but you don't know who is connected to who.
You're 2 or 3 text messages away from being able to talk to a rep from any of these record labels.
Definitely.
Or any of these booking agencies or any of these bands that you want to tour with. So make sure you're in good standing because word travels fast in the music industry.
Yep. And I know that everything that we talked about, because this is our 4th interview with the Battle of the Band stuff, I know that it's a lot of information to take in. It really is a fire hydrant worth of information. But we want to get it all out there so that you can start working on it. And the more you work on rounding yourself out, the more it becomes second nature, because like, as I talked with Thomas from Bradham, and I'm sure that Justin could say the same thing, this is like second nature to us. Like all this stuff that we wrote down is like we just do it. It's just like, oh, but not everyone really has had all these conversations, especially if you're just starting as a band. It's okay that you didn't, like, if you are listening to this for the first time and you didn't even think about half the things that we said on here, that's totally okay. You're new. You're new. If you've been doing this for 2 to 3 years and you still didn't know, that might be an issue. But we just
there's some things that
grow.
There's some things that they might not have known. But at the same time, it's like there are certain things on here that you need to know as a band. And like you were saying, like it was second nature. It's second nature to us, but it wasn't at one time. These are things that we had to learn the hard way, and we're trying to tell bands things so that they don't have to learn the hard way. They can
learn
thrive
from us
without
chasing the chickens.
Yeah, seriously, don't chase the chickens.
Absolutely. Well, Justin, I really appreciate your time on here, and I really believe that all this stuff is helpful, and I really hope that everyone can apply stuff. If anyone listening has any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to put it in a comment down below, or to message us, or to message Justin or the Noise Box. Where can people find out more about the Noise Box, by the way?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram. We don't have a YouTube, but if you look up the Noise Box, specifically the Hole in the Wall, you'll see some really cool videos of just like the nature of the venue. We have 2 rooms. One's a hole in the wall. It's literally just a hole in the wall. It's a classroom made for kindergartners, and we put adults who act like kindergartners in them. And then we have the Noise Box, which is the main room where we have more of like the bigger bands or just like longer shows in it because it just fits more people. And then sometimes we run 2 rooms. But yeah, we're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. If you get on Facebook, my information's in the about section on there. So feel free to look on there. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. I don't know all the handles off the top of my head because I don't care that much for my personal socials. So isn't
it like Justin underscore Forthteller, or
yeah, I think that's my Instagram.
Justin,
I think it's my Instagram. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I don't have continuity because I really don't care. But for the Noise Box, the Instagram is the Noise Box FL, and I'm pretty sure that's what the Facebook is as well. But you can just search the Noise Box and it'll come up for sure.
For sure. Well, thanks again for your time. Thank you to anybody and everybody that's been listening. Again, please feel free to reach out about anything. And if you have questions, we're going to try to have like answers on some other podcast coming up. So that'd be awesome. But yeah, thanks everybody. See y'all next time.
Don't chase the chickens.